You know, when most of us picture a threat in space, we kind of expect it to look like a blockbuster movie.
Right, yeah. Giant lasers, things blowing up.
Exactly. Satellites exploding into a million pieces, alarms blaring everywhere. It's very loud and highly visual.
But the reality that we're seeing in the intelligence briefings from the past 2 weeks, it paints a completely different picture. I mean, that movie screen goes totally blank.
We are looking at a battlefield that is silent, invisible, and honestly incredibly murky.
Absolutely.
Good morning. Today is August 28, 2026. Welcome to a comprehensive, impartial deep dive into the current strategic situation in the space domain.
Our goal today is to calmly and professionally deliver the facts, examining different global perspectives.
Right, and we're doing this without the fear-mongering you usually hear on the news. We want to give you the data so you can understand the real courses of action.
And to help us achieve that objectivity, we have some very unique tools at our disposal today.
Yes, we do. This deep dive is sponsored by ProWave AI, and the intelligence we are analyzing is generated by Stylo News.
Which is actually a massive advantage for you listening.
It really is, because Stylo News is the newly released consumer version of Stylo Intel Ops. That's a platform originally designed for enterprise operations across, government, military, and global business.
So you're getting decision-maker level access to the exact strategic briefs used by global leaders.
Today, we are unpacking space operations across the U.S., Russia, Europe, China, and, several emerging players.
We will look at breakthrough technologies, military applications, and potential flashpoints, really filtering out the noise to focus on the facts.
Okay, so let's unpack this. If the threat in space isn't lasers and explosions, what are global decision makers actually looking at?
Well, the intelligence explicitly points away from kinetic destruction.
Meaning physical impact that blows things up, right?
Exactly. The focus has entirely shifted to reversible disruption. Take Russia, for instance.
Right. They've been very active.
They have. They are currently assessed as the most immediate operational threat to European and NATO operations. But they rely almost exclusively on electronic warfare and cyber capabilities.
Yeah, the report specifically flagged two Russian electronic warfare systems. There's Peresvet-M and Volna.
And what's interesting is the primary target isn't some highly classified military satellite.
No, it's degrading commercial Starlink connectivity.
Right. And the mechanics of those systems really dictate the strategy here. Take Peresvet-M, for example. It's a directed energy weapon.
So basically a ground-based laser?
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
But it doesn't blow up the satellite. It dazzles or permanently blinds the optical sensors on reconnaissance satellites.
Which is a huge distinction. And then Volna, on the other hand, is designed for radio frequency jamming.
Precisely. Which means if a military force is relying on a commercial satellite network for command and control, an adversary doesn't need to destroy the hardware at all.
They just saturate the radio frequency receivers with so much noise that the satellite just can't hear the legitimate signal.
Right. The satellite is physically intact, but it's deaf. And once the jammer is turned off, the satellite works perfectly again.
It's reversible, which I imagine avoids crossing that critical threshold into overt strategic escalation.
That's a key part of it. You also avoid the catastrophic consequence of creating escalatory debris.
Because blowing up a satellite at orbital speeds creates, tens of thousands of pieces of shrapnel?
Yes, all traveling at roughly 17,000 miles per hour. And that debris doesn't care about geopolitics. It could easily blindside your own multi-billion-dollar infrastructure.
That shared vulnerability really forces adversaries into the gray zone. I mean, we are seeing reports of what the intelligence calls co-orbital stalking.
Yes, systems like the Russian Luch or Olymp satellites, they are actively shadowing European communications satellites.
The brief even mentions Russian nesting doll anti-satellite concepts, which, just from an engineering standpoint, are fascinating.
They really are. A larger satellite maneuvers close to a target, opens up its payload bay, and deploys a smaller, highly maneuverable subsatellite to get even closer.
This proximity allows them to intercept secure signals, conduct close-up surveillance, or prepare for future interference. And they do it all while hiding behind the excuse of routine orbital adjustments.
It provides a massive degree of plausible deniability.
Now, the precedent the intelligence keeps circling back to for these non-kinetic attacks isn't even in orbit, is?
No, it's not. It's the Viasat Ka-SA cyber attack that occurred at the onset of the conflict in Eastern Europe.
That attack remains the textbook example of space cyber vulnerability. An adversary doesn't need an expensive rocket to take out a satellite network.
In the Viasat case, hackers simply deployed malware targeting the ground terminals. They overwrote the flash memory on tens of thousands of ground modems simultaneously.
Permanently bricking the hardware. But wait, looking at the sheer scale of modern networks, constellations like Starlink have thousands of nodes in low Earth orbit to prevent a single point of failure.
That's true. If one satellite goes down, the laser intersatellite links just route the data around it.
But doesn't that massive scale just create a different kind of vulnerability? It's like trying to protect a massive fleet of delivery trucks. You don't need to blow up the trucks if you can just hack their GPS and scramble their routes.
What's fascinating here is that the sheer size of a proliferated constellation absolutely mitigates the physical loss of a single satellite. But, as you pointed out, it amplifies the vulnerability to systemic cyber or spectrum attacks.
Right, because you have millions of ground terminals and dozens of gateway stations. You've vastly expanded your attack surface on the ground.
Exactly. If an adversary compromises the central ground gateways or jams the uplink frequencies over a wide area, the orbital redundancy doesn't matter. The entire network is grounded.
This dynamic shifts our focus to the actor the intelligence assesses as the long-term strategic pacing threat, which is China.
Yes, Russia might be the immediate operationally opportunistic disruptor, but China possesses the sheer scale and industrial depth to fundamentally alter the domain over the coming decades.
The critical concept the reports highlight here is civil-military fusion. In the modern space race, commercial innovation is, well, it's the ultimate military camouflage.
Take the recent successful landing of Landspace's Zhuke 3 reusable booster.
Right. On paper, it's a massive commercial milestone. Reusing a first stage powered by liquid oxygen and methane drastically lowers the cost of getting mass to orbit, which is obviously great for business.
Economically, it is a game changer. Mechanically, however, in a doctrine of civil-military fusion, a reusable launch architecture fundamentally rewrites military surge capacity.
Because if a conflict does escalate or a network is severely degraded by the electronic warfare we just discussed, the side that can replace its satellites the fastest holds a massive tactical advantage.
Precisely. A reusable booster means you aren't waiting months to manufacture a new rocket body. You recover the booster, inspect it, refuel methane tanks, load a new payload, and launch.
It allows a nation to rapidly reconstitute a degraded satellite network in days.
Now, to be fair, China did experience a notable setback recently. The Long March 7A rocket exploded less than 90 seconds after liftoff.
Yeah, that completely destroyed the ChinaSat 4B satellite.
It did. But the intelligence assessment views that anomaly as a temporary localized failure. It doesn't alter their broader trajectory.
Because their multi-domain counterspace toolkit is expanding rapidly, this includes sophisticated direct descent capabilities.
Right. Ground-launched missiles designed to physically intercept satellites in low Earth orbit, as well as their own rapidly expanding intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, or ISR, architecture.
And this booming ecosystem is also drawing in secondary actors. We are seeing reports alleging that Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is utilizing these exact Chinese commercial launch firms.
Yes, to place their own surveillance satellites in orbit. They are effectively bypassing international sanctions through seemingly benign commercial launch contracts.
The intelligence is also tracking North Korea's expanding missile cooperation with Russia, which indirectly elevates the risk environment for allied space operations by proliferating launch technology.
And we shouldn't forget Israel. They have publicly stated ambitions to become a leading nation in anti-satellite weaponry.
Operating on the premise that a robust space offense is required to deter regional adversaries. But this brings up a massive legal and strategic headache.
How so?
Well, when does a commercial internet constellation stop being civilian and start being military? If a purely civilian internet constellation is suddenly contracted to carry encrypted military communications, where is the line?
This gets very blurry.
Right. If an adversary jams a dual-use satellite, are they illegally attacking civilian infrastructure, or are they legally blinding military command and control?
The ambiguity is the feature, not a bug. Commercial cover severely complicates any warning and response frameworks. The blur makes deterrence incredibly difficult.
Because global decision-makers can't easily categorize an attack as an act of war or just a localized disruption. So dealing with this reality, how are the U.S., Europe, and their allies adapting?
Where U.S. Space Command leadership has started explicitly framing future conflicts under the concept of Space War 2040.
And central to that 2040 concept is maneuverability, right? Because traditional satellites are essentially like cable cars. Once they are attached to their orbital track, they are entirely predictable.
Exactly. Adversaries, using basic high school physics, know exactly when and where they'll pass overhead. Space War 2040 is about taking those satellites off the wire and turning them into off-road vehicles.
So they must have the onboard propulsion and fuel reserves to change their paths unpredictably, evading the co-orbital stalkers we discussed earlier.
The defensive posturing is changing on the ground, too. A striking report outlines how the U.S. Army is actively preparing to engage enemy surveillance satellites.
Right, so adversary ISR, the eyes in the sky, are no longer viewed as just passive observers collecting data.
Exactly. The Army isn't just worried about losing communication, they're worried about the very first link in the terrestrial kill chain.
Meaning, if an adversary's surveillance satellite spots an allied troop movement, the Army wants the capability to blind that satellite's sensors before those coordinates can ever be transmitted to a missile launcher on the ground.
Integrating space control directly into multi-domain military operations is a massive shift. But beyond offensive capabilities, there is a massive push for sovereign resilience to protect Allied access.
European policymakers have recognized that over-reliance on foreign commercial systems creates unacceptable strategic exposure.
And that realization is driving the accelerated deployment of the European IRIS-T secure communications constellation, which aims to integrate quantum cryptography to prevent signal interception.
We also saw Japan successfully launch the Michibiki 7 navigation satellite on their H3 rocket this past week.
This is a critical mechanical upgrade for Allied resilience. The Michibiki expands Japan's quasi-zenith satellite system.
So, by having their own dedicated regional network, they reduce dependence on a single global system like GPS, because GPS, as we've seen in recent conflicts, is highly vulnerable to spoofing.
Right, and spoofing isn't just jamming a signal with static to make it disappear. It's far more insidious. An adversary broadcasts a stronger, counterfeit GPS signal.
It essentially feeds the receiver false coordinates, so a commercial aircraft or a cargo ship confidently believes it's in a safe location while it's actually steering directly into hostile territory.
Exactly. By having multiple independent navigation constellations overlapping, a receiver can cross-reference the signals. That makes it significantly harder for an adversary to successfully spoof the navigation data without being detected.
Despite this drive for sovereign independence, though, commercial partnerships remain the absolute bedrock of current operations.
They really do.
I mean, AST Space Mobile just executed a successful 3-satellite launch to beam broadband directly to unmodified cell phones. We also saw Vietnam's VinSpace sign a 2027 satellite launch contract with SpaceX.
Nations just can't decouple from the commercial sector overnight. And there is also the deeply human element in low Earth orbit that relies on all of this infrastructure.
That's a great point. Amidst all the talk of autonomous kill chains in cyber warfare, French astronaut Sophie Adnot, alongside NASA's Anil Menon, conducted a spacewalk outside the International Space Station this week to manually install a spare antenna.
They literally had to step into the vacuum of space to physically restore high-speed communications with mission control.
It's a stark reminder that while militaries prepare for off-road maneuver warfare in orbit, there is an ongoing, cooperative human presence up there, completely dependent on those fragile communication links to survive.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this need for secure nodes and resilient architecture doesn't stop at low Earth orbit. The exact same competition is expanding outward 250,000 miles away.
Right, zooming out to the cislunar domain and the moon itself.
Yes. The reporting shows NASA is aggressively pushing the Artemis program timeline, stacking SLS booster segments with the goal of returning American astronauts to the lunar surface by 2027 or 2028.
The political prestige factor is heavily emphasized there, especially with former President Trump recently awarding the Congressional Space Medal of Honor to the Artemis II crew.
But beyond the national prestige, NASA is deliberately building an international coalition. They've formally invited India's space agency, ISRO, to join the Artemis moon base program.
Which times perfectly because India just celebrated their National Space Day, rolling out a massive vision through 2047 that includes lunar sample returns, a Venus orbiter, and their own sovereign space station.
This multipolar collaboration is strategically designed to counter China's aggressive lunar ambitions. China is specifically targeting the lunar South Pole with their upcoming Changes 7 mission.
They're aiming for manned lunar missions by 2029, right?
Yes. And the mechanics of why they want the South Pole are crucial. It's not just a geopolitical land grab. The South Pole contains permanently shadowed craters that harbor ancient water ice.
And water is the most valuable resource in deep space. It provides life support for astronauts, but more importantly, you can use solar power to split water into hydrogen and oxygen to create rocket fuel.
Precisely. Whoever establishes a foothold at the lunar South Pole effectively controls the primary logistics and refueling hub for the entire inner solar system.
So we have this highly contested military environment, gray zone cyber attacks, co-orbital stalking, and a strategic race to control lunar resources. But when you look at the social media sentiment, the public perception is utterly divorced from the military intelligence.
The contrast is jarring. Pulling data from X via Stylo News, public sentiment is overwhelmingly positive, awestruck, and celebratory.
People are watching SpaceX recover the Starship prototype, Ship 40, intact from the Indian Ocean near Christmas Island, and they are thrilled by the engineering.
And when NASA shares images of a Falcon 9 impact crater on the moon, the public shares it as incredible science, not a military threat.
They see beautiful nebulae, reusable rockets, and humanity cooperatively returning to the stars, while the military intel sees a contested war-fighting domain.
The intelligence community looks at the exact same rockets and sees the rapid deployment of dual-use constellations and potential orbital kill chains. The irony is that the public is cheering for the exact commercial innovation that the military views as camouflage.
Are these two realities going to violently collide, or can commercial optimism outpace military escalation?
This raises an important question regarding how space governance will evolve. The rockets driving the optimism are the very same rockets deploying the military infrastructure.
International frameworks will need to evolve quickly to protect civilian exploration from these gray zone conflicts already happening in orbit.
Based on this Stylo News Intel update, synthesizing all the intelligence, there are a few immediate watch items.
What should global decision makers be looking out for next?
Well, watch for the upcoming launch of the Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope from Cape Canaveral, the progression of China's Chain 7 lunar mission, and the continuous deployment cadence of Starlink.
And as for courses of action?
The primary recommended course of action for global actors is investing heavily in distributed, maneuverable, and interoperable architectures. Predictability is a fatal flaw in the modern space domain. Resilience is the new deterrence.
For those of you listening, if you want this level of strategic insight at your fingertips every day, you need to check out the platform that generated today's brief.
It provides a massive advantage for anyone needing to stay ahead of global events without the spin.
Exactly. Stylo News is available as a mobile and computer app. You can download it to customize your own personal intelligence-style briefs, pulling from hundreds of traditional news sources and X.
It really cuts through the noise to give you the objective facts and proposed courses of action.
You can subscribe and get AI-powered news on demand at www.stylonews.com. We really appreciate you taking the time to explore these complex issues with us today.
It's been great unpacking this data.
We definitely want to hear from you, so please request topics for future deep dives, and be sure to follow Stylo News on your favorite social media platforms. Before we go, though, I want to leave you with one final thought to chew on.
Oh, this should be good.
We started by talking about how the threat in space is entirely invisible, devoid of Hollywood explosions. As we watch rockets land themselves and internet beam down from the stars, consider this. If a silent cyber attack on a satellite network takes out the GPS for an entire continent's civilian infrastructure, grounding flights and halting financial transactions, is that considered an act of war in space, or just the new normal on Earth? Until next time, keep looking up.